Hello, everyone. This is a new podcast that focuses specifically on intervals. Just a reminder, we have not talked about all of the remaining major scales and the chromatic scale on a podcast, but these exercises are in the textbook, lesson 31 and 32, and also on musician. So if you need help with reviewing this, please look through this on the textbook and your notes on the video from the class on Tuesday, September 26th, and all of that, because you will be responsible for these topics as well for the quiz. But for this podcast, we're just focusing on reviewing our work on intervals. Okay, so a reminder, intervals is how the term interval is how we describe the distance between two pitches, a lower pitch and a higher pitch. In lesson 35, we begin to talk about two types of intervals, perfect and major. And in the definition here, it says that the interval between the key notes of a major scale and the unison fourth, fifth, or octave of that scale is called a perfect interval. The key note here, what they mean is that the bottom pitch, if you're building a major scale starting with the bottom pitch, here it's C. So and if you're using only the notes of the C major scale and the bottom note is C, when you have a unison, a fourth, a fifth, and an octave, these intervals are called perfect. Okay, the same idea here for the second, third, and sixth and seventh. Okay, again, here I'm reading the definition. The interval between the keynote of a major scale and the second, third, sixth, or seventh of that scale is called a major interval. Okay, so same idea here. If the bottom note you're building a scale using that note, in this case is a C, and both notes are coming from the same C major scale. If it's a second, a third, a sixth, or seventh, these are called major intervals. Okay, so in order, you can see on the page, it would go from perfect unison, major second, major third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, major sixth, major seventh, and octave. Okay, so that's what we call the diatonic intervals. The diatonic intervals are all of are intervals that are using the notes from the same major scale built on the keynote or the note on the bottom, okay, of the interval. So that's what we're focusing on. That so in any case, if you're looking at an interval, you're looking at the bottom note of that interval. Because there's always two notes, so one is going to be on the bottom, except if it's a unison. And you're looking at whether or not, well, first is what are the notes of the major scale that's built on that bottom note. If it's a D, then you're looking at what are the notes of the D major scale. That's the first step. The second step is looking at the top note, whether or not that note is part of the D major scale, whether or not that note is found in the D major scale. Okay, if it is, then you're just counting the interval and figure out the name, whether it's perfect or major. In lesson 36, we're introducing one more wrinkle to this. It's called minor intervals. Okay, so basically, minor intervals, here I'll read it from the definition. When the interval between the two notes of a major interval, a second, third, sixth, or seventh, is decreased by a half step, they become minor intervals. Okay, so this is a chart of how major intervals may be changed to minor intervals. For example, the row saying, seconds, right? There's a major second between C and D, and when you reduce that distance by a half step, okay, in this case we made the D from D to D flat, okay, then that becomes a minor second. Okay, so again, we're reducing or decreasing the distance between the two notes by a half step. If you start with a major interval, if it's decreased by a half step, then it becomes a minor interval. Okay, that's all we're going to start with right now. So you'll need to head over to complete the exercises on the textbook and then complete the musician levels that I have assigned, and then finally write a journal entry that reflects on your practice with intervals level 4 and 5. Okay, good luck, have a good weekend, and I will see you next week.